Welcome home, fam. I'm Will Carr. This is the Diginacci sequence, and we're going to have some fun today. I've got two awesome guests on with me. Got Phil Spinuzza. What's up, Phil?
What's up, Will? How you doing?
Good, man. And we got Crypto Heavy. What's up, brother?
Hey, what's going on, man? Happy to be back.
Yeah, man. Well, hey, we've got an exciting day. We've had a full day, and we've definitely got some stuff to talk about. Unfortunately, we don't have our co-host XRP Sean with us today. So no one wearing a cool hat or having, silly sunglasses on. Oh, the Crypto Heavy coming in with the
Gotta
heavy, getting Sean's back.
Represent Sean for him.
Well, before we get started, I'll just say our sponsors for the show today are a pound of ground beef and a quart of raw milk because we don't like to mess up a good thing. So with that in mind, let's get in and talk about LINQTO, because what seemed like such a good thing for so many investors to be able to get the small guy in on private equity and to be able to have an opportunity to invest in these startup companies such as Ripple, such as LINQTO, such as Uphold, and several other AI companies and different tech companies that were on the platform. I know so many people that were excited to be able to, for the first time, buy into private equity, and then this shenanigans happens. So I'm going to kind of open it up. Crypto Heavy, I know you had, a tweet that, went viral to kind of talk about, because I know you personally had invested on the platform. So yes, kind of tell us, what do you see that's going on right now?
Yeah, so I mean, as far as LINQTO the company, I think that anybody who put money into it did their research on it. For me, I had a buddy that gave me like a heads up about LINQTO and gave me some information to look into it. So I literally kind of dived into LINQTO and I was working through trying to figure out how that worked for like 6 months before I did any investment on it. And so once they opened it back up, because it was initially for accredited investors, you couldn't get it, but they had small windows where they allow you to either move your assets from Uphold over to LINQTO platform, and you can invest as a non-accredited investor with, a smaller startup of 2,500 or 5,000 to get a piece of like Ripple or whatever, pre-IPO company you wanted to go into. So I had a buddy do it first that me and him, we served in the military together as a really good friend. And so when he did it, he told me about it. I looked into it. When that window opened back up, I invested into it, pulling from Uphold over to LINQTO. So I moved XRP from there because like that was my biggest bag. Moved money from my XRP over to LINQTO about a year ago when that first opened up. And so, and I was super confident in that and super okay with that move because I felt like having a part of Ripple, the company, as well as XRP, like that's a win-win because we know where XRP or where Ripple is going to be in the future. I felt like it was going to be the next Amazon, the next, Google or whatever you want to call it for Web3. So I was super confident in that. And the structure that they had set up, it was like you said, it was like trying to look out for the little guy. And so like, I thought that was an opportunity, especially in this blockchain era that we're in, that we're invested in, that was just like the next evolution of like how we would, be able to get around the accredited investment type of piece. So not knowing a whole lot about accredited investment prior to that, like I was just going off of like what that LINQTO platform had and their structure. It looks really good to me, So like I was willing to make take that risk and put that investment in. So my post and my tweet was more like I personally did my own research. I personally take accountability that if that goes belly up, then that's on me. That's not on any influencer because no influencer helped me make that decision. I made my own decision. And just like buying XRP, every time I put money into it, that's my decision. No influencer is hyping me up to go do that. So if XRP goes to zero, I was fully aware of that. And I'm not going to blame Brad Garlinghouse because that's a business. And I totally understood that. So like, my tweet was more or less like, I don't play in the game of being a victim when it comes to like making especially a decision when it comes to money. You should be fully aware of where you're putting your money. You should be fully aware and very confident that wherever your money is going, especially if you invest in a large sum, if this is taken away from your family, then you probably shouldn't have done that. because nothing that I put into would stop my kids from eating. Nothing I put into it will get me out of my house and my home. So like, I think that people need to really, take accountability to like the decisions that they make and knowing that this is a risk asset and it's a possibility that you can lose everything and be comfortable with that, but not point your finger at people. And that was kind of my tweet.
Right.
They got, some mixed reviews. Some people was like super like, yep, I understand. Some people was like, no, you should blame them. And it's like pitchforks and, they're the devil. And it's like,
Yeah.
and I think that's not fair because
No.
like those guys are doing what they need to do. And they also are invested into that platform. It's not like a shill is somebody who's not invested, but it's getting people to go buy something that they don't fully have some investment in it as well. These guys losing money too. They human too. They got a family too. So like to point them out and make them like they're like the evil person that's doing this is kind of crazy to me. Like how people turn on people so quickly.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's the whole idea of investing. Like no one held a gun to your head and told you to go and put money into LINQTO. When you invest, you take on a certain amount of risk. And these people that are trying to blame the influencers and blame others, and I don't know. I personally didn't have any money on LINQTO, which I'm obviously grateful for now. It was very interesting to me. I thought about it several times,
Yeah.
but I just decided to keep my money in the actual digital asset infrastructure. But I would like looking at LINQTO, I have no idea what anyone could have possibly seen that would have told them that this was going to happen. And so, I just kind of want to ask, for anyone that doesn't quite understand, Phil, can you just kind of give like a rundown of your understanding of kind of what's going on at LINQTO and how the people that have their money that had money in there are affected?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very, very complex situation. John Deaton held a wonderful spaces yesterday and discussed it thoroughly. Not sure if you guys caught that or not,
I
but he
didn't.
did a
Yeah.
great. Yeah, he did a great job, and he summed it up quite well. It's a total cluster, you know what, and the influencers, those guys are invested as well. They are not unharmed like anyone else. I do think that people will be made mostly whole in this when all the dust settles here. But those guys, they all invested, and no one was able to see what was happening on the back end at that point in time. Like John Deaton discussed on his pieces yesterday, DAI, Brad Kimes, they have significant funds on the account on LINQTO, more than most people, quite honestly. So to point fingers at them is simply unreasonable. It's irresponsible. It's out of line. There's most likely NDAs involved that are preventing them to truly speak to it. And I think people need to understand that. So everyone just needs to chill out. And when you invest in private equity like that, the first thing they tell you, it's basically you have to understand the risk here. This could always happen. But I will say this, crypto heavy, to your point, LINQTO did look extremely reputable, and there were a couple payouts from other private equity
Yeah.
opportunities that it appeared they were handling the SPVs appropriately. And that's really, I think now the biggest issue is what happened to the SPVs. Because I also think a lot of people thought they were actually buying legitimate shares of these accounts when in fact you're buying what's called a special purpose vehicle known as an
Yeah.
SPV. So I think that also there might have been a lack of education for a lot of people. And then crypto heavy, you made it another great point, only invest in anything what you're capable and willing to lose. So for those that maybe push the limit, that's a shame. And I sincerely hope everyone's made whole again. But Will, to answer your question, so LINQTO people had an opportunity to be non-accredited investors and purchase what they thought were shares of various companies. They were really buying SPVs of those companies. It appeared that everything was being handled right until it wasn't. And now, based on that Wall Street Journal article, it sounds like there's been commingling of these SPVs. And I don't know if you guys caught that Wall Street Journal article, but
Yeah.
the previous CEO, I think, was obviously doing some very shady stuff. They were buying Ripple stock at one price, selling it to potential investors at a 60% markup. You
Yeah.
can't do that. When it
No.
comes to private equity, you can't push it past 10% markup. They were creating false FOMO. Also, there's a litany list
Yeah.
of things. So I think the issues with LINQTO really came down to poor management by the former CEO.
And you got to think like everything that the influencers were telling their audience was essentially coming from LinkedIn. But like you said, Phil, like it's no way for them to know what's happening on the back end because they're not part of the company. they're getting the same information, the same FOMO, the same, we only have X amount of Ripple, stocks to give out. And if you want to do it, come get it now. Like it's a normal marketing scheme. Like you provide like a need, you provide like this is very exclusive. And if you want it, come get it. And so like that wasn't anything to do with the influencer. They're just doing their normal platform, like how they do their spill because they, like you said, they got NDAs. DAI came out and said he has an NDA. He said it on his video today. He said it in the past that like he can't say what he wants to say. He can only do surface level, meaning like he got to take all the brunt from people's like assumptions about him and then give them whatever they're already hearing. He can't give his true opinion. And anybody who watched him for any amount of time know that he's all about finding the fraudsters and the people that's doing wrong to the community. So for
Yeah.
people to think that he was a part of it, is outrageous.
Outrageous.
And again, I'm not, and I don't even know DAI personally. I just met him at the XRP Las Vegas. Me and him ain't best friends. And so when I say this about him, it's not because I'm like got a personal relationship. It's just that I know a scammer. I know a person who is not genuine. And meeting those guys, they're very genuine and very much a man of their word. So if they came out and said something, they wouldn't just shill something knowing that it's fake and it's gonna hurt people. They wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
They just wouldn't do it.
Well, and I think
Exactly.
there's really like two sets of people that I see on X that are, causing a stir about this, or I mean, and maybe that's not even the right way. I mean, maybe just straight up complaining is the right word to say. And the two sets of people are, one, people that invested that are obviously upset right now. And I totally get that. I've invested into projects. I put money into, private equity deals that didn't turn out well and completely lost all my money. That happens sometimes. Like anyone that invests should know that there's a risk that they're going to lose. I mean, I get it. I was a bit salty too when I had my first one or two rounds of like losing money and stuff like this. But like you have to understand that that's a risk that you take. And I think the second set of people are really just people that have been hating on blockchain from the beginning, particularly people that want it, that want to hate on XRP and want to hate on Ripple. They're using this LINQTO situation as an excuse to hate on the blockchain community. And to, I've even seen people throwing stuff out at Brad Garlinghouse house at this point. I'm like, how is that like, does Ripple, you want to claim because Ripple has some, Ripple has an investment in Uphold, and Uphold was a LINQTO partner. And now somehow that incriminates the entire Ripple team. Like, people are just pulling at they're just pulling at straws at this point that, and I think a lot of those people, they just want engagement, they're just trying to, hate and throw out nonsense in order to get engagement and cause division.
It's wild, man. Yeah, I mean the trolls, we all understand like there's some people that does troll, but like the faceless trolling that they do. And I mean, it's one thing to point out that like, this is a oh, okay, you're an influencer and you promoted this, you probably shouldn't have, but it's like you can only do so much research, the same research that we do before we go and make that decision, right? Like you got to go set it up yourself. The influencer isn't setting up your account. They're not going in transferring the money. They're not going in seeing how much you got in your bank account. Can you afford it? You got groceries. They just shared the opportunity. And if they didn't do it, then you will say, oh, well, they got the inside scoop and now they're gatekeeping from the community. They're not letting other people get involved. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like, it's a catch-22. You're going to lose either way, but you got to have value in the influencer. If you see that they've been doing good work for X amount of years, and then this comes up, it blows up. Okay, cool. Like that's a mistake for everybody. Everybody's in the same boat. Everybody's losing. And it's not a time to start throwing fingers at, like throwing shit at people like, oh, well, this person was doing this since X, Y, and Z. And it's like, those people are trolls and haters that just were jealous or either wanted to say something in the first place. And this is just an opportunity for them to try to diminish that person's character. And I don't like that because that's not right.
And it's so out of line because Brad DAI, they have significant funds like other people locked up in LINQTO right now. You think if they knew differently that would be the case? Not at all. They are in the same boat as everyone else. And by the way, they are two of the most genuine human beings I've ever met in my entire life. I'm not going to speak for them, but I can speak to them. And they are two of the best people I've ever met and ever had the pleasure of spending time with. They're not out there shilling. they're in the same boat like every one of us. And it's outrageous. The trolling's
And
outrageous.
it's to think that like somebody like if they let's say like the XRP Las Vegas and that you to think that Brad Garlinghouse would come to a place where he felt like an influencer was a grimy, shady
Yeah.
influencer that's hurting the community, like he wouldn't put his name behind that. Like I mean, it baffles
No
me. You know what I
chance.
mean? Like it's just like let's use logical thinking. It's like it's no way that
Yeah.
this billionaire would come here to this event and save his time, his money, his company behind something that he felt like a shady person was trying to take advantage of. Same
Oh,
thing with John Deaton. John Deaton is a stand-up dude,
Totally.
and he would call you out on your shit. He did it at XRP Las Vegas. He don't play, and it's no way that he would back somebody if he thought that they was doing shady things. So it's like
Right.
yeah.
he got duped, Brad got duped, the influencers got duped, we got duped. Like it's just a ripple effect of
There's
how many people
there's
got duped.
only so much, like, do your own research, but there's only so much research you can do. Like, no one is getting like the back end operations and understanding if a company is actually doing things that they say they're not doing. Like that's where the ethics of the company come into play, to be
Facts.
actually doing what they're supposed to
Yeah.
be doing and what they say they're doing. To blame the influence in these people is just childish. It's really just childish.
It's beyond outrageous for a lot of reasons. Here's another reason it's way more than beyond outrageous. Brad Kimes and DAI organized John Deaton to get on stage with Dan Siciliano, the current CEO of LINQTO, to ask him questions and provide the community clarity on the situation because they clearly can't speak to it directly. They organized John Deaton to get on stage with Dan and ask the hard questions for the community. No one else was doing that. And by the
Nope.
way, the risk that they ran with having Dan Siciliano come on stage before Brad Garlinghouse, I was back there. I was helping them, kind of put this whole thing together. It was a little stressful for all of us, and that was a big risk to have Brad Garlinghouse go on behind John Deaton and Dan Siciliano. But to get John on stage with Dan to ask those tough questions, to do that for the community, that alone should speak volumes to the community. I mean, and if you can't recognize that, you're lost. You're out there trolling,
But
lost, you're done.
that's
Yeah.
the same people though, honestly, that's like, well, they think that XRP Las Vegas is a scam. So like
Yeah.
those
They're the
same
same ones
people,
that
they're in
think
the
every
same
time money
bucket.
comes out of escrow that
Yeah,
they're dumping on us.
they're all in the same bucket, man. It's
Yeah.
crazy. Like and they so they push it and they can't wait to like throw shade and throw and it's like, but the XRP community, we was there. If you was there at the XRP Las Vegas at any one of the years, you see the atmosphere, you see the love that's in the room, you see
Oh,
like the genuine people that's there. It's no way that you can go to that and still think like, oh well, these guys are trying to scam the community. It's like, are you like use your brain, man? Like
Yeah.
you sitting at home on the couch and you watching your reality TV shows and you just trying to get people riled up,
yeah.
and it's so unfortunate because usually the higher influencers, they're not really in the comments. But I tell you what, my ass be in the comments. Like I'm in there because like I ain't no high influencer. So like I say what I say because like I don't like that. Like it's almost like a bullying tactic of like, oh, we gonna say all this crazy stuff about your character when you never met this guy. You don't know this man from Adam, but you want to say that he's doing X, Y, and Z. You don't know what's going on in that man's pocket. Like how you sitting here talking about it? Like just mind your business, run the course. We all in this together, and we'll get through it. And John Deaton is the perfect example because he's gonna make sure that he is transparent and tell us what's happening. So like we got somebody in our corner that's a lawyer that's gonna say, hey, this is right, this is wrong.
Yeah. Thank God for that.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah, really. Thank God for John Deaton, right? Like this guy's been a
Seriously.
warrior for us for a very long time. And John Deaton's just a good dude. Like, especially like you can see that on any of his videos, like you watch any of his stuff, there's nothing fake. Like he's not
No.
pretending to be something that he's not. And when I got to meet John Deaton and shake his hand and talk to him, 100% I can tell, and I feel like I'm really good at being able to feel people's energy and understand them. And John Deaton is an honorable man. Like he's a good guy that genuinely cares. Like if you read his book, Food Stamp Warrior, and understand where he came from, his motivation is truly to help bring people to a better place in life. And so this guy just wants to help us understand what's happening. And it was really great to have him on stage. to talk to Dan, that's when this first started. I mean, all this started when we were out at XRP Las Vegas, and here we are
Right.
a month later, and it's coming full circle to find out that actually it really is as bad as people were thinking. I feel
Yep.
like everyone's nerves were kind of settled and calmed after that conversation that Deaton had with Dan at XRP Las Vegas. And obviously now it's just, turned into a whole new tornado of events.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you got to think like the LINQTO CEO the year prior was there, so like, but who would have knew that he was doing shady stuff?
No,
You know what I mean? Like,
There's no way
it's
to
like
know
he
that.
was a good guy. He was a good dude. I mean, and so like it's hard to like pinpoint like what you're supposed to do sometimes in these situations because you can do all your due diligence and still end up in this situation right here. And it's easy to say like, oh, I wish I wouldn't have did it, or to be on the other end is like, see, I showed you you should have did it. Something was shady, and it's like, but did you really know it was something was shady, or was you just not willing to do it at that moment? And maybe a year later, you were like, oh, I wish I would have invested because Ripple is now X amount of dollars, just like Circle.
Yeah.
So it's like it's either side, but it's not a right or wrong. It's just like your comfortability in this market and how you feel about it.
Yeah.
You got to make that decision yourself. You do. Like you got to make that decision.
You sometimes win, you sometimes lose. That's what investing is, even
100%.
Even you can invest into the best things that have the best business plan and have, what can seem to be like a very easy path to, being cash flow positive. And that still doesn't mean it's going to work out,
Right.
And so for a situation like this, I think people were investing into something that really seemed like a great thing. And I think it would have been a great thing if the LINQTO company had been being ethical and doing what they were saying they were doing rather than doing shady stuff behind closed doors. So yeah, I mean, I want to get on and talk about, what's going on with Ripple, but before we wrap up with LINQTO, kind of any final thoughts, Phil, anything, Darren?
I think that's what it boils down to. They had something really good going, and then for whatever reason, higher ups in the company started making some very bad decisions and did some scrupulous activities that harmed a lot of people. I trust John Deaton's going to help find resolution for the community, and I think everyone just needs to be patient. Everyone needs to maintain composure, as hard as that may be for some. And the trolling, the accusations, they just have to stop.
Yeah.
I will say that, to see the difference in a CEO like Brad Garlinghouse and like his message about the LINQTO, which he didn't have to say anything about it, but he did, was phenomenal. Like, because he always looks out for the community as well, like, and always kind of sets it at ease. Like, look, this ain't got nothing to do with Ripple. I feel y'all guys. I understand what's going on. We did what we were supposed to do. Obviously, we don't know what they got going on in the back end because it's not like he's trying to pass the buck. It's like let me set you straight about how we do our system and how we run our business. Y'all already know this, but we got trolls out here saying that y'all was linked to LINQTO, just like Uphold and all these things. So he set the groundwork of like how a CEO responds to something, even though he didn't have to. He didn't have to say nothing.
Yeah.
He could have just left it be. He don't got to be on X and say anything. He could have just been like, all right, whatever, man. That's not our company. But he did.
Yeah.
He came in there and he said it. He's just such a great dude, like, and such a cool dude. Like, he just so laid back. This is what it is. And it puts us at ease all over again. It's like, all right, cool. Like, when we know our company, because Ripple is our company, XRP holders, that's our company. Like, we got stake in them, like a different kind of loyalty for them. So it's good to see that they're doing things on the up and up. That kind of sets us at ease. And then, obviously we know what LINQTO did. So we'll play the course on that.
Yeah. Well, Brad Garlinghouse once again shown that he's the classiest CEO in the crypto space. So, he just, has to continue to show why, we all love Ripple so much. But yeah, so guys, speaking of Ripple, let's talk about the Ripple Bank. Like Ripple applying today, to get their license to be a bank. And not only that, we had Eleanor Terrett, our favorite lady in the crypto space, at least from my standpoint. I love, she's always, Ellie's always keeping us informed with everything that's going on.
She dropped bombs.
And yeah, I appreciate her work and always keeping us up to date with the news and what's happening. But yeah, they applying for a master account at the Federal Reserve. these are huge things. And I think people don't quite understand, exactly how big these are. I think if I can even pull up Eleanor's tweet here, let's see if I can share this and, we can read through it real quick.
Mhm.
Cool. So, yeah. And I think, basically what she's saying here is, the OCC trust charter is cool, but the Fed master account is the bee's knees. And there's been issues historically with banks that want to work with crypto, such as Custodia Bank, who's now in a lawsuit with the Federal Reserve, and them trying to prevent these banks from getting a master account at the Federal Reserve because they work with crypto. Now, I would think, because just in the last week, we've had Jerome Powell announce that basically they can do whatever now. Banks are allowed to work with crypto. There's full send, like no more stops in play for the Federal Reserve or for banks that work with the Federal Reserve to be able to custody crypto and go all in on blockchain. So tell me, like, kind of, Phil, what's your thoughts on this, man? Like, Ripple becoming a bank, getting a master account with the Federal Reserve, they'd be the only crypto company that has anything remotely close to this.
It's monumental. It's incredible to see because we've speculated on this for quite some time, and the master account with the Federal Reserve is huge. That grants them extreme access to the financial world, to transacting money across the planet. I mean, this is a really, really big deal. I don't think people quite understand. It's huge. I think it's going to be massive for RLUSD as well. It's going to help drive their stablecoin adoption, which is super significant.
Yeah, I agree. I think that people don't really understand how deep this is because this will make RLUSD covered under like the same requirements of like a bank. So the security behind it and all the things that you get from the dollar, like RLUSD will be able to have that as well under this. So like there's no way that institutions wouldn't want to custody RLUSD because they'll have the same security that they would have as a dollar. So like it's going to be phenomenal once that comes in. We, like you said, all the conspiracy theorists that we had for years when he said we were crazy, and it's like it's not going to ever happen. Ripple's never. It's like we saw the writing on the wall before everybody else did, and it's like so crazy to see it happen. And like when they announced it, I was like, see, we already knew this. Like this is old news, man. But like it's just great to see it in real life in real time. And it was a good day, man. It was a good day for everybody in the community.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Today was a great day, and I often say I'm trying to figure out how many great days I can just string together. Life just feels like to me, especially, I mean, I don't know, I would say recently, but I try to look back and it's just like, life is just a series of great days strung together. But today is definitely a day, that I think will honestly go down in history as like, when these things are approved, and there's no reason that they shouldn't be.
Correct.
Like, you have to be so, I'm just going to say it. You have to be so stupid not to understand that this is a big deal and not to understand that this is going to be an absolute game changer for blockchain such as XRP. If Ripple is the only company that has went through a legal battle with the SEC and has legal clarity as through the courts, and now if Ripple has a master account with the Fed where they can store RLUSD directly with the Fed, no middlemen, this puts Ripple and XRP in a league that only they are in. And it's like no one other blockchain will be even remotely close. Like, when Phil was on the last show, we talked a lot about the ISO 20022 tokens and how that's basically the majority of what we're invested in. Even with that, none of those other ISO 20022 tokens have anything remotely close to this. I love HBAR. I love XDC.
Right.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of these other quantum compliant blockchains, but none of them have direct access to the Federal Reserve. None of them have their own stable coin that is tokenized on chain. Like, what do people think is going to happen when we are tokenizing bonds and treasuries? And that's only going to amplify exponentially. You know, when we've got projects like Proppy that are token, and I don't know if either of you two are in on Proppy, but Proppy is a project that I'm in on that I really love.
It's like tokenization of like real estate, right?
Tokenization of real estate. Exactly. Yeah. And as we move into this new phase where we're tokenizing everything of value, when you have one cryptocurrency company such as Ripple with their own stablecoin that can bridge between all these other tokenized assets, what do you think is going to happen?
I think the pros are just in their house right now, just hitting their head against the wall because all the people that said that this would never happen and this would never work and that Ripple's this coin or that coin, it's like y'all are wrong. I can't wait until it's approved so we can really say you're wrong. And like the news about XRP and Ripple is it's like a rotation of new information that you don't see from any other project. No other project, and I'm invested in like H4. I think it's going to be have a huge run. But you got to think what H4 do. They worked with Ripple and XRP.
Yeah,
they's like, we're going to partner with you with some other things. I think XLM is going to have a place in there, XEC. But like with all of that being said, they don't have the same narrative that Ripple and XRP have. Like they literally went straight to the government and said, we're going to do it compliance wise. We're going to do it the right way, and they have an agenda. And when it actually shows its face fully, oh man, we gonna be the biggest winners, man. Like it's no doubt. It's just no doubt, man. And we still early. That's what's crazy. It's like it's still early right now. We getting this news, but it's early. We getting this news. It ain't nothing approved yet, nothing adopted yet. We know it's coming. Before we didn't even know. Now we know. And so
the writing's on the wall. Like there is no denying that these things are happening. Like
nope.
The only thing you can say is, oh, I think they're shady, or oh, they're trying to do bad things, or I'm an idiot and I don't understand.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. The escrow. It's like, you're an idiot. Like, get out of here. You see what was it? SHX? They just did the same thing. Like escrow and bringing it out every month or whatever quarter. That works. Yeah. That's why they're doing it too. Like it's
transparent.
It's transparent. It's a good marketing scheme. It's a good business like structure. Like it's very good for the company. Like y'all are idiots. Like y'all just when you hate something so much, you don't care how good they are. Like you don't care how good they do, no matter what they do. So it's just wild. I just laugh at those people because they outrageous and they're going to lose a lot of money.
Well, and I think that's why Brad even tries to be so, loving towards the Bitcoin community, because he wants us all to be too like, yes, we're going to 1000x versus Bitcoin.
Yep.
But we don't need to hate on those guys. If they're stuck in, 2013, let them be stuck in 2013. Like if they're stuck on these narratives of XRP is centralized, or, Ripple's dumping their escrow, and they always want to talk about, oh, there's a fixed supply. But I'm always like, okay, every day there's 450 more Bitcoin. So it is inflationary. Just because there's a max set of inflation, sure, that's better than the US dollar.
Correct.
In the long run, that there can only be 21 million. Like if the US dollar was inflating, but we're like, oh, there can only ever be a, 10 quadrillion dollars. Like, we're making more, but there'll eventually be a cap, that would allow, a more calculable approach to inflation and understanding that. So I do get, that argument, I guess you could say, but also no, it's going to inflate for the next 150 years. Every day there's more Bitcoin. Every day there is less XRP. Now some more might come out of escrow in order to go to strategic partners, or in order to go to things like operating a bank. But there's less every day as transactions are made on the ledger. There's only, start with 100 billion. There'll only be less every day. That is completely different than Bitcoin, And so
Absolutely.
I don't know much about Stronghold, but maybe they have a similar story,
Yeah,
I
I'm
don't
not a
know if
big
they inflate or what.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. I just thought it was interesting. I know it's a big stronghold community.
Yeah.
I'm not invested in it. But I just thought it was cool that they kind of ran the same, business type of plan as Ripple with the escrow and stuff like that. Instead of doing like XLM and just burning half of it, they went the escrow route. And maybe that project is gonna have a huge kind of like impact like Ripple. Again, I'm not too familiar with the project, but I know it's a lot of people that's involved in or
Yeah.
in Stronghold.
But I think even that, it's another example of just, I don't know if they're even ISO 20022 compliant or
Right,
not,
right.
but they definitely aren't in talks to get a master account at the Fed.
Nope.
No
And
digital
I'm curious. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Phil.
I was just, no digital asset has a company behind them like Ripple doing the things Ripple is doing. No,
Nope.
not
No.
a single one. Not a single one. It's truly remarkable.
Yeah.
And if you look at Bitcoin, it's like they backed by influencers and people who got a lot of money, but there's not a company behind it. So like their strategic reserve, Bitcoin strategic reserve, if they didn't have that from the government, if they didn't have that blessing, they literally would, it'd be, I think Ripple will flip them even faster because like they don't have anything else outside of being a store of value. And that's totally fine. Like you said, it beats inflation. And if you hold it for a long period of time, it'll beat inflation. And that's totally fine if you want to use it like digital gold. But as far as utility and transforming the financial of the future, that's not Bitcoin. And
That's
everybody who knows anything about blockchain, even a little, knows that Bitcoin is not going to help the financial landscape in the future.
Yeah.
Except the Bitcoin shield to like want you to keep buying Bitcoin and hold it because that helps them
Yeah.
pump their bags. That's it.
Only if we can tokenize Bitcoin on the XRP ledger to allow it to move
That'll be
fast and to allow it to move cheaply. It has the ability to possibly be better than the dollar. But that's it. That's literally your best hope with Bitcoin, that it is somehow better than the fake fiat.
In terms of utility, yes, I completely agree with that. And Bitcoin, it's a unique story. It's not backed by anyone, but in my opinion, it has been hijacked by the financial institutions, and now that is its utility. It's a great financial investment for these institutions. They're making a ton of money with the Bitcoin ETFs, the various funds. So I think, fortunately for Bitcoin, because it's now in the hands of the FIs, it is not going anywhere, in my opinion. Not at all.
No.
I do believe it's a strong investment. Is it a great buy at $100,000+ today? Arguable, but it's not going anywhere. And utility wise, that's its utility. It's a financial investment tool. That's it.
Totally.
I
It's
tell
the original.
people, I tell people all the time, I'm like, you can have some exposure in Bitcoin and not be a maxi of Bitcoin. Like you should have some kind of exposure. It's almost like gold. Like you can get
I
a 1
agree.
ounce gold. You buy a little bit. Like I use Link, and I'm like, all right, I put a little bit at a time because I can't just go buy a 1 ounce gold, nugget. So it'd be similar to Bitcoin if you have some exposure because hypothetically it could go to $1 million in the next 5 to 10 years, right? Hypothetically, like, and so like in
Maybe
the
after
way
it comes
these
back to
governments,
10K.
yeah, but it's like you got to think like all these institutions, all these governments they banking a stake on it. So potentially, but then like I can't see that, like you said, Phil, like going away just because how many governments will fall under if that happened, US included? Like it'd be too catastrophic, like for them to let Bitcoin go to zero. I just can't see it.
It's too big to fail at this point. Everyone's too
Yeah.
heavily invested. That will never happen, in my opinion. It's too big to fail.
Once BlackRock got into it, I was like, okay, cool. Like I'll get some exposure. Like literally, like I was like, BlackRock is not going to put his money into anything that's going to fail.
Yeah.
They won't let it happen.
They
So,
won't let it
That
happen.
also means the opportunity is gone. By the time BlackRock's
oh,
ETF for
Oh.
XRP is live and it's been trading for 6 months, you better been in XRP already. Like
Yeah.
that's not the time to buy XRP, And that's where I feel like Bitcoin is at. There's so much hype, there's so much marketing around it, but what does it truly do other than a store of value? And it's possibly better than the dollar, too big to fail at this point, yada, yada. But also, cryptocurrency is super speculative. It doesn't take much to move the market up and down We understand that from market cap multipliers, you know, that guys like Zach Rector have done and showed us. Those things hold true for Bitcoin too. You know,
Yep.
if people start pulling out if someone wants to pull out $100 million from Bitcoin, that's going to lower the market cap much more than $100 million, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to add to that. You know, Cynthia Loomis not too long ago stated that a big reason they want to put Bitcoin in the strategic reserve is to use it to pay off the national debt. Well, to pay off something, you have to have equity from something else. And if she's saying she wants to use Bitcoin to pay off the national debt, she said she wants to do that in 20 years. I interpret that as they're going to sit on Bitcoin for 20 years and then dump it and use that equity to pay down the debt. Well, what happens when they sell off all their Bitcoin in 20 years, as she, I believe, stated?
Yeah.
That could be the time that Bitcoin goes away.
It could.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, at that point,
because
I mean,
like they already got their use out of it by that time.
right.
Like, and blockchain is already running fluently, and they already, I mean, the actual utility tokens will actually be integrated by that time, and maybe Bitcoin won't be needed at that time. That's very interesting. Though. Like, I didn't hear her say that. That's very interesting, because I wondered how they was going to use it. They keep saying like, oh, it's going to pay the debt, but I'm like, in order to pay the debt, you got to sell it. But you selling it against the dollar, and the dollar's inflated. So like, how does that all work?
The
You know what
other
I mean? Like,
option is for the Federal Reserve to decide that they'll accept something like Bitcoin and then hold it on their balance sheet. But I also think what's interesting is, you know, as these laws are getting passed, you know, you might have someone like Cynthia Loomis only saying Bitcoin, Bitcoin, Bitcoin. But as these laws get put into place, it's not just Bitcoin, it's cryptocurrency. So the United States government could hold on to any blockchains that they felt like were valuable. And as those skyrocket in value, you know, Bitcoin could just be a small sliver of that. You know, maybe Bitcoin's 2% of it. And as the US government can then use that cryptocurrency, as long as the Federal Reserve will take that stuff as payment, then yeah, they could pay off the debt with those assets without having to convert it back to dollars, because the Fed does hold on to certain assets on their balance sheet, predominantly treasury bonds. And that's a whole other rabbit hole we could go down, how the Fed prints money and then buys treasury bonds and what's that backed with nothing but the treasury bonds, you know, nothing with the money that they printed out of thin air. But they have the ability to hold assets on their balance sheet. So it is very plausible to think that in the future, they could hold blockchain tokens as collateral. And that would honestly strengthen the Fed a lot, you know, if we did that, you know, like I imagine probably all three of us are people that are like in the Fed, you know, let's get rid of the Fed. But I don't 100% know that's going to happen. You know, I'd say it's probably unlikely. If it did happen, you know, it'd be a real party up in here. We'd be jumping on live, like, you know, we'd be having a great time. But I think what's a more likely situation is that somehow the Fed can become better, and that it will still be present, but it could become better by holding on to assets that have true value, such as just blockchain and various cryptocurrencies.
That'll add value, more confidence to the dollar too, or global trading and stuff like that. So like that would help, because I think right now it's so weak that, like, you know, everybody used to want the dollar, and they still do, but it's like it's losing that shininess that it used to have based off of how inflated it is,
right,
and how the government is running the country and the debt. You know, so like it's. I agree. I think like,
and it's because there's better alternatives now. Like
it is.
There didn't used to be, the only alternatives in the past to using the US dollar were other fiat currencies or having to transport extremely large amounts of heavy metals, which isn't very feasible. And that's honestly another thing that blockchain is going to be able to help with, by being able to tokenize gold and silver and then being able to trade that between countries with a trustless system of accountability, knowing who owes who what, regardless if that gold is held in London, if it's held in New York, you know, if it's held somewhere in China, knowing that they have a ledger of this tokenization that is instantaneously accounted for, that if at any time, you know, and maybe they'll decide quarterly they want to settle up. Maybe they'll decide annually they want to settle up. Maybe they'll agree to like 3 or 4 or 5 locations where just most of the precious metals can be held, and they won't need to settle up hardly ever. but you know, it is what it is. Personally, I like gold and silver a lot more than Bitcoin. I love
Yeah, I do.
blockchain. I
Yeah,
love blockchain. I love my ISO tokens. You know, obviously I love my XRP, but I would much rather hold on to gold or silver, you know. And I know that in the blockchain space, you know, a guy like Peter Schiff gets a lot of hate, but you know, he's obviously an extremely intelligent man who's made a lot of money over the years, and the things that he says, you know, make a lot of sense. And you know, gold and silver have been that backbone of the financial system for thousands of years, and it's only recently that we've went off that standard. And so to think that we're going to be able to bring gold and silver back in a meaningful way through tokenization on blockchain is really cool in my opinion. And I just think it's
absolutely.
cool to have something tangible you can hold in your
Yeah.
hand.
I mean, I always go back to like if the world goes to crap, like I want to have some silver because we won't have debit cards or dollars. It'll be tangible assets that people will bargain with. So like I always tell people have some silver coins.
Yeah. Well, guys, you know, we've been on here. Let's wrap it up. You know, any final thoughts, Phil?
Just keep buying XRP, not financial advice.
Yeah.
And don't wait. Don't wait much longer, or you're
Yeah.
going to be paying a lot more.
Yep.
So, all right, guys. Well, this was fun. Thank you both for coming on the show. This was awesome. I mean, we had a lot to cover today. It's been a very eventful day. But yeah, until next time.
Till
Look
next
forward
time,
to it,
man.
Will. Thank you. Thanks, Crypto Heavy.
Hey, nice talking to you, Phil. Talk to you
Yes,
guys
sir.
later.
Appreciate it, guys.
See you guys.